there anything buyers and sellers, that we should be thinking about as we move into 2024, or just be prepared for?
I mean, be savvy. Be savvy with your money. Attack it with some goals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if you're sitting down and strategizing with us, that is something that's going to put your best foot forward despite the different, adverse conditions of the market.
The housing market looks a lot different than it did 3 months ago. Now, houses are still selling, but it looks a lot different. So here to help us with tips and tricks that sellers need to know if they're trying to get their house off the market is Austin Long and Kristen Carter. Austin, Kristen, tell me about the market, because what we were seeing 3 months ago in the housing market really doesn't apply. We know you're still selling homes, but it's different. So tell me what's changed.
Well, I think the first thing is the seasonality. That's always a thing. And I think most people are pricing their home according to what the market was in the summertime. And that was also a time when rates were hovering in the 7s. Now they're in the 8s. And so that's kind of a threshold breaking point when buyers are looking. They're like, do I want to rent? Do I want to buy? Can I make another thing happen? And so there's a little bit more hesitation on the buyer side. And because of that, houses are sitting a little bit longer.
How important is the price? The price sticker when you first look at a house. Tell me, why is that the whole thing?
I think 2 years ago we were stretching for what could a home potentially appraise for, and then maybe throwing another 30, 40K at it because the buyers were willing to bring that. I think now it's super important and critical that it be properly and aggressively priced so that it's appealing to the market, and that way you don't have long days on market.
And I know you mentioned seasonality, right? Less people want to move in the colder weather.
Absolutely.
So are what we seeing right now, is it a sign of things regulating themselves, or is it just what happens every single year at this time?
It happens every year, but that's also happening on the heels of the unknown of next year. And so it depends on the echo chamber you're part of. Some people say rates are only going to get higher. You look at the world and the potential wars happening everywhere, and people, they have the future in mind when they're planning now. And some people are hopeful, and they're like, well, rates are going to go down. So seasonality is always normal. It's always October, November, December are slower months. But some people are also making the decisions thinking ahead of the future and not knowing what's going to happen.
Okay, so you guys, as the smart realtors that you are, you're thinking, okay, especially for a seller that's like, man, I want the most bang for my buck because we want to upgrade or we want to do this or that. You guys really have to think strategically on how to get them that price. So what are some, let's go through the list. What's the first thing that you have to tell a seller to do to get the most, or to get that buyer to commit?
So Austin will start thinking numbers right away. For me, I'm going to think of aesthetics. So I come at it from the perspective, how ready is this property? Are you already out and it's empty? Do you have to move somewhere? Is it going to take you a week? Is it going to take you 4 weeks? So that way I know if you're going to get too close to the holidays, too close to winter and slush and ice, if it's something that they can get aggressive on, I'm 100% thinking, how do we roll with the market who's trying to get the tail end of what's available on the market?
And so you think numbers right away?
Yeah, I do. I think, it's been we're coming off of a time where it was a little easier to sell, and we could really hit that number, and we knew just because money was cheap, rates were low, that buyers would go crazy on the terms just to get their bid. They even called them bids, you know what I mean? It wasn't called an offer anymore. And we're not in that territory anymore. And so it's looking at reasonable comparable sales and saying, hey, this is what your property is, this is what it looks like, and these are the terms that a relevant buyer in the market is going to bring to the table. And so just be expecting that, and let's price it accordingly. Let's plan for a normal inspection period. Let's plan for a couple other things that we could plan for during a transaction, and let's price it there. And so of course, that's my opinion. We bring that to the table when we go to listing appointments, and it's ultimately the seller's decision on what they're going to price. But we're looking at, there's a lot of factors in pricing, and the last thing you want is for a house to sit on the market longer than it should. Right now, median days on market in Cincinnati is only 3. So if something is well priced, it'll only last, I know, it's crazy.
3 days, that's all you have, 72 hours to make your decision.
Yeah, so get your bid in. But anyway, so if it's sitting longer, then people start to wonder, or if it goes off the market and it goes into contract with somebody, and then it falls out of contract, then buyers can see the history of the sale, and they're like, why did it fall out of contract? Yeah, what's wrong with it? And a lot of our job is we take calls, hey, will you call the agent on this one and ask what's wrong with it, you know what I mean? And that's a lot of what we're doing now, because things are popping on and off. And so anyway, it's starting at the number is as the right spot for the entire transaction.
How does that change your job every time the feds raise the interest rate?
I know on my end, I start thinking very creatively. There's a lot of new build options. I know you've put a lot of new builds into contract recently. They have a lot of rate incentives. And so if we can get our clients into something that might offer them just a little bit of a break in the rates, that's awesome. We also give them a lot of perspective that later, a year from now, when rates are lower, they're going to be up against 20 other people on every home, the way that they were before. And so if they're willing to stretch themselves a little financially and not be in the very best scenario, you know, with their mortgage payment and those rates, now they would at least secure the home, maybe not have to overpay quite as much, and then they can turn around and refinance. And I think that's creative, and I think it's a good solution.
Oh, okay. I never thought of that. So there are ways to make it work.
Oh, we've got a buyer.
Not yet. Not yet. But I do want to talk, because your big thing is staging a home.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, is it really about decor? Like, is it really about the feng shui when you walk in to, like, make someone want the home? Tell me a little bit about the art of that.
Absolutely. I think it's exactly that. I think when we meet a friend or a potential spouse or a car that we like, I think we're looking on the outside every single time, at least initially. And so inspections are to dig in, right? But when you first walk in a house, if you can't picture where your furniture would go and you don't have a warm, fuzzy feeling like, oh my gosh, I wish I could live here, you're probably not going to take it to the next step to try to make a purchase. And so it's really huge. And even when people virtually stage, that's effective for going through photos.
Yeah.
It might get your butt in the door for a showing.
Right.
But when you see it, does it have an echo? Does it feel like someone died? You just never know if someone's going to be like, I love this. But when we go live with a listing and it's staged beautifully, I mean, sky's the limit between what a buyer will pay for something that is gorgeous and they want it versus someone saying, this is cute, I like the location, and it's empty. So,
But it costs more money to stage.
so one of the things that we've been able to effectively do is really take what a seller's budget already is and what we are as a benefit to them and really kind of absorb most of that. And so our sellers are really winning by pairing with us because we have the best negotiation skills, the best marketing out there, and we're a resource in terms of staging. So they're really not, their pocketbooks aren't spending much on us, and it's really effective.
And the whole goal, I mean, our job as agents is to market and sell, and marketing is really the thing that takes the most time. It's key, and the goal with marketing is hopefully we can get into multiple offers, because if we can get into multiples, if we can go back to one agent and say, we've got another offer on the table, that's when the buyer starts saying, okay, I'm okay to modify this term or edit this one or waive this thing, you know what I mean? To get the terms in the place that we want them for our sellers, to represent them well, is the entire goal of staging.
Right. How much more likely, if a home is staged, is it to sell?
75% more likely and in half the time.
And
Really?
It's huge. I've got an excellent example of that from last
Please
week.
tell me. Yeah,
Is that
enlighten
okay?
me. Yes.
So last week, I had one that went into contract, $20K over list price. It was in multiples the first day that it was on, but only 2 weeks prior, I had been there, I had staged it, I had gotten photos. We literally went live. This one closed 3 days ago. Within 20 days, less than 20 days of me meeting them, staging it, getting the marketing, getting it live on market, having showings, literally running through those multiples and closing. It was like just a little over 2 weeks, and I had their money in hand.
Holy moly. Is there any particular neighborhood right now in Cincinnati or greater Cincinnati that people, I don't know, that you're seeing more houses sell or than others?
Well, I think the most competitive ones are the school districts, and so those are always going to be more competitive. Obviously, that's a huge selling point for people, and you know, as people outgrow the inner city and they're getting families, they're moving out, and so those are you know, more competitive, and that's where staging comes in more. When you can pitch a view to a buyer of how your family can live. Maybe there's this extra bonus space could be an office space instead for your work from home
Flex
mom or
space.
dad, you know, or flex space or something like that. Or maybe this basement is now an entertainment area. So we can sort of cast and pitch the idea for a family. And so anyways, the school districts are kind of the hot
I think
spots.
secondary to that, because that is 100% the first one, is walkability. That is such a factor for people right now, is that if they haven't yet moved into that like suburb stage and really like focusing in on schools, they just want to be able to walk to coffee, walk to a bar, walk to it. That is huge, don't you find?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
those, if they are
Those
properly
are my
priced,
kind of people.
Yeah.
there you go. If they're properly priced and well staged, because those people especially, they want a vision. They want to see it looking like they want to live there.
And those are the calls we get too from out of state people moving in. I want to be a pedestrian again. You know what I mean?
They
Okay, let's
do.
make you a pedestrian. You know? So
It's
they want the
true.
walkability. They want, you know, because when you see Cincinnati just on media or you Google it, it looks very walkable. But those spots are a little bit more competitive to be in.
I
so
think some of his
we try.
leads are 100% looking at the places he's gone. He highlights local, places to eat, places to be, entertainment all the time. And I think a lot of those Google leads, they literally are looking at him enjoying a location
Yeah.
and going, I want to live there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just like living their life before
I'm
they
living
move.
their life. Yeah, until they buy it back.
Look at that marketing tool.
Yeah.
What is your 3 biggest tips to someone who is trying to sell their home? What should they be doing first? What should they be thinking about?
I'm going to go with the first one.
Okay.
The first one is that I think that we spend a lot of time, just as humans, looking at reviews before we do something, doing some amount of research, hearing from someone we trust. This person is wonderful, right? I think the very first thing that people need to do is go, who is going to help me with my biggest asset? Who's going to help me make that purchase? Because I think people are willy-nilly choosing a friend of a sister's or someone they knew from high school or what have you. I would dig into, does this person negotiate well? What is their track record of sales? What kind of business are they doing? What kind of volume do they do? Are they living and breathing the real estate market? Do they have great relationships with other agents? I think people should screen their real estate agent and make sure that they are hitting every box.
Yep.
Because I think if you're making a selection based on I enjoy her and we sometimes go out on Friday, that is not going to be helpful to you getting your very best
You having
deal.
a drink with me doesn't mean you're selling my house.
And it's your biggest asset, you know?
Like,
It's the most
put some
money.
care into that. If you were going to do heart surgery on me, I'd want to check all of the people that you had done that well on, and I would shop carefully for what you were doing. So I think.
But let me ask you this.
Yes.
Can we see your stats publicly? Like, where can I get that information?
100%. Zillow.
Where do
Yeah.
I go to see how many houses you have sold? Can I see that all in one place?
Yep, you
Yes.
can go to Zillow, you can go to, you can Austin Long Realtor, throw me on Google, I'll pop up and
You
it'll
can
show
literally
those
look at a
stats.
picture and it'll show you all the little dots of everywhere that we've sold, and it'll say here in 12 years and here in 24, or here in 12 months and here in 24 months. Here's the volume that they've done, and then it'll show reviews. I mean, I have almost 100 people with a 5-star review saying, here's what she helps with, here's what she's great at, here's why she's a resource. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Trust people. Don't just willy-nilly call someone on a sign and say, hi, I saw there was a sign in the yard. That's not in your best interest.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and tell me also, because I think people are going to ask themselves, okay, I looked up these stats, but how many houses do they have to have sold for them to be reliable? Like, what is the is there a gold standard?
Well, I would, the average every year for the average real estate agent, and this ranges from very high producers to your aunt or whoever that has license.
Joe Schmo down
Yeah,
the
Joe
street
Schmo,
just doing it
who's
on
got
the
his
side.
license.
Yeah.
Is 4. 4 every year is normal. Is a normal amount. They say 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people, and so there is a huge bell curve there of production. And so I would say, knowing that 4 is normal for. What sort of numbers above that are we looking at? So,
And
do
so
you wanna
we're
chime in?
top producers, and so that means
Of
that
course you
if
are.
we
Here comes the plug.
if we don't sell 50, we're not happy annually. So we're the hustlers out there.
wow.
And so, 2 years ago I sold 70, the year after 65. Those are our numbers. So it's important that you work with people who run those kind of numbers and have that many at bats so that they're going to go to bat for you well.
So number 1, do your research.
Do your research.
Don't just go with Joy, who's a joy to hang out with, but
But that's
we
about
don't
it.
know if she sells homes.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
So what's the second one?
Number 2, I would say really price is the thing. You don't. People always are like, I want a price high, and then we'll work our way down over time. That is long
terrible
days on
strategy.
market. Yeah, you do. I mean, I know we talked on it earlier, but you do want to price strategically.
Those people are going to get creative with you and be like, okay,
Yes.
listen, I loved the pictures. My butt is in the door. I'm already interested, but it was at a price point they could afford. Now they know they're in multiples, right? We see who can pull the trigger on more.
Yep.
It lets us go to bat for the seller much better.
And that's when we can start negotiating for the best opportunities for our people.
How hard is that though for people to understand? Because honestly, that theory that you just threw out there about starting high and okay, if we gotta lower, we lower it. That makes logical sense to me.
It
Do you know what I
really
mean?
makes logical sense. You are part of the majority. So
Yeah.
our job as really good agents are to say, let's talk talk about mindset and thought process, because ultimately we know that you're excited about your top dollar and you've looked at all your comps and you really want to get whatever it is that you're thinking.
Yeah.
And we have to come in and say, but what we really want to do is help strategize you for your best terms, the best experience. We need the most people to be excited. We don't want you to have 2 people that trickle in over the weekend because your price is super high. We want 12 people on a Friday, and we want to start talking to them with an open house on Sunday and start bidding them up so that through the weekend we have your very best offer at play.
Okay. Is that, once you explain it like that, do people generally understand, or do you kind of have to have this conversation multiple times?
I think track record also helps. If we can say, hey, this is what we've done here, this is
Proof
where we
is in the
priced it,
pudding.
and this is where it's landed. And so that, that's a recipe for success that continues to play
Absolutely.
itself out. So
And I
we're
think
able to
there's a
show
lot
that.
of agents too who are not ready to have that open conversation and really give the thought process. They really allow the seller to be in the driver's seat on that and to say, well, this is what I want. And they say, okay, let's go for that. And we're up against people constantly when we are, at a listing appointment talking with a seller, where we have to say, listen, it's a fine balance between wanting to have a great relationship with you and wanting to win this listing, and us being relevant and honest with you and forthright and saying, this is what your value is and this is what we believe your best strategy is. And if that plays out to us getting the listing, awesome, because we can go to bat for you well.
Okay.
And if you really just want someone to lie to you, there's going to be a line of those people.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, trusty number 3. What is the tip number 3?
I think staging.
Yeah.
Staging.
Marketing well, yeah.
Marketing well. And we're like, that's like a 2-piece thing, because really it's like the staging is delightful, but if you're not getting that in front of people, if you're not appropriately showing that in the form of like, here's your open house and here's your social media content and here's people who are even in advance looking at it. We go behind the scenes. We're on Facebook platforms and all kinds of platforms trying to make sure people see this is what's coming up. Get your people inside this first. And so I think just a balance between it being beautiful and it being in front of a lot of eyeballs.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in any more general advice, I mean, that you can give as we move into maybe another higher interest rate and dark, cold of winter, is there anything people should, buyers and sellers, that we should be thinking about as we move into 2024, or just be prepared for?
I mean, be savvy. Be savvy with your money and your decision. Don't let that be something that it happens.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll shop. I'm going to call somebody from Zillow, and just, I think, attack it with some goals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
if you're sitting down and strategizing with us, that is something that's going to put your best foot forward, where we know that you've looked at the creative ways. You've looked at all of these things that could be in your benefit despite the different, adverse conditions of the market. I think just 100% making it a play on your best.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Scenario.
don't be willy-nilly. You gotta have the plan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the plan. And that's what I was going to say. As part of being savvy is really do sit down with an agent and map that whole plan out. If you have to buy after you sell, what is that going to look like too? Because you're not just a seller, you're a buyer now too. So what is that going to look like, and how can we strategize there? And can we look at off market? And can we, what is on market like? And so that the entire plan, to have that mapped out before you have anything public or pull the trigger on anything, is the best thing you can do.
Okay. Austin Long, Kristen Carter, where can everyone find you?
Oh gosh, we're everywhere. You just do your little Google search.
Just go like that.
Yeah, there's no hiding.
Do you have any do you have any platform or website that you're on more than others?
So for me, I would say Instagram is kind of the best. Austin Long Realtor is my Instagram handle.
Okay.
But also Google and other things too.
And I
Okay.
would say most of my sphere of influence is large, but I would say that most of my people, my leads, and the way people find me has been Zillow. That's where I direct a lot of my traffic to my business, but also you can plug it in anywhere.
Okay, great.
Plug it in.
Thanks for coming in, you guys. Yeah, thank you. That's such good advice. So hopefully all those buyers and sellers out there, you're listening and getting prepared, because it changes every day.
Sure does.
Absolutely.
Okay. Local 12 has more consumer stories just like this. Don't forget to click the links and press subscribe.